The ring's metallic clank is now a deafening cacophony in his ears as it revolves like clockwork. The force of its rebirth made his still raw, hardly repaired body quake. But despite the terrible destiny she had attempted to inflict on him, he stood, wobbly but alive. You really don't know when to die, do you? The voice, soft and lilting, carried an edge sharp enough to cut through the suffocating air. He looked up, his gaze locking onto her. She stood with a cruel elegance, her figure framed by the dim light. Her black boots splashed idly in the crimson pool beneath her, as if she was playing in a puddle after the rain. The blade in her hand gleamed, its jagged edge dripping with his blood. She tilted her head, a mocking pout gracing her lips. You were supposed to stay down. Do you have any idea how much effort it takes to kill someone perfectly? And yet, here you are. Her eyes glinted with something dark, something twisted. She wasn't angry. No, she was amused. To her, this wasn't a fight, it was entertainment. The assassin twirled her blade, her movements graceful and deliberate. You're full of surprises, I'll give you that, she said, her tone sweet but laced with venom. That little light show of yours, it's almost enough to make me jealous. She took a step closer, the sound of her heels echoing ominously. But you know what I like more than surprises. She leaned forward slightly, her grin widening. Breaking them. He didn't respond. His body, still adjusting to its newfound strength, screamed in protest as he tightened his grip on the shard of wood in his hand. She laughed, a sound that was equal parts musical and menacing. Oh, don't look at me like that. It's cute that you think you have a chance. She lunged without warning, her blade slicing through the air with deadly precision. He barely dodged, the blade grazing his side and sending a sharp sting through his body. The assassin didn't pause. She spun around, her movements a dance of lethal intent, and struck again. You know, she said, her voice carrying over the clash of their movements, I don't just kill people. That's boring. I like to savor it. The way they beg, the way they break. That last moment, when they realize they're completely mine, her smile widened as her blade clashed against his makeshift weapon. It's beautiful. With all of his strength urging him to fight back, he gritted his teeth. A loud clanking sound came from the ring on his chest, giving him another rush of warmth. His motions became quicker and more accurate as his reflexes improved. She noticed. Her eyes narrowed slightly, though her grin never faltered. Oh, you're getting better. Good. I hate it when they go down too quickly. Her strikes came faster, each one testing his limits. But he was adapting. The ring's hum resonated in his mind, guiding him, strengthening him. For every slash she delivered, he counted, his body moving as if it had a will of its own. Impressive, she said, laughing breathlessly as she dodged one of his strikes. But let's see how long you can keep up. She feinted left and then darted to his right, her blade aiming for his exposed side. He reacted instinctively, the ring spun again, as he spun around and parried her attack. The force of the clash sent her stumbling back, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. For the first time, her playful demeanor faltered. Just slightly. He didn't waste the moment. Gritting his teeth, he lunged at her, his makeshift weapon aimed for her chest. But she recovered quickly, sidestepping his attack with inhuman grace. Not bad, she said, her grin returning. But you'll have to do better than that. She kicked him hard in the stomach, sending him crashing to the ground. The impact knocked the air out of his lungs, but he forced himself to roll to the side as her blade came down, embedding itself in the ground where his head had been. Panting, he scrambled to his feet, his vision swimming. She yanked her blade free, twirling it as if this were all a game. You're stubborn. I like that, she said, her eyes gleaming with sadistic delight. It makes it more fun when you finally break. The metallic clank of the ring grew louder, its sound now reverberating the whole room. His wounds, though fresh, stitched themselves together with grotesque precision. He could feel his strength returning, stronger than before. And in that moment, he realized something. She wasn't invincible. For all her skill and confidence, she could bleed. She could fall. The assassin noticed the change in his expression and smirked. Oh, are you finally starting to believe you can win? That's adorable. He didn't answer. The ring's clock action was reflected in his resolute eyes as he instead strengthened his hold on the fragment in his hand. After that, they clashed once more in the pitch-black interior of the loot house. His eyes improved, allowing him to see his predators' sparks from their lethal dance through the darkness like nighttime owls. Their clash was relentless. Each strike of her blade against his makeshift weapon reverberated through the blood-soaked room. Her movements were precise, graceful, and utterly lethal, but there was something else beneath it all, a sadistic enjoyment, a twisted pleasure in toying with him. She moved like a predator savoring the chase, her mocking laughter echoing in his ears. "You're getting predictable," she teased, sidestepping his desperate thrust and countering with a sharp slash across his chest. As he staggered back, the ring started to repair the new wound with a mechanical clank. Even though the pain was acute and sudden, it didn't deter him. The assassin tilted her head, her lips curling into a cruel smile. "What's that little toy of yours going to do? Heal you forever?" She lunged, her blade aimed low, and he barely managed to block the strike with his shard of wood. But this time, she wasn't playing. She twisted her body mid-strike, her blade arcing upward in a fluid motion, and it found its mark. A sharp pain erupted in his stomach as her blade sliced through his flesh with terrifying precision. He staggered, gasping as the warm, sticky sensation of blood spilled down his torso. His knees buckled, and he fell to the ground, clutching at the wound. She stood over him, the blade gleaming red in her hand, her expression one of pure satisfaction. "Ah, there it is," she murmured, her voice soft, almost tender. "That moment, that beautiful moment when they realize they're completely at my mercy." He attempted to stand, but the agony was too great. Even the strength of the ring on his chest, which pulsed and clanked louder, was insufficient to stop the pain. She crouched before him, her face inches from his, her eyes shining with cruel delight. "You've been fun. Really, you have," she said, brushing a stray lock of blood-stained hair from her face. "But I think it's time we properly introduced ourselves. Don't you agree?" He glared up at her, his breath ragged, his vision blurring. She grinned, her teeth white and sharp in the dim light. "They call me the Bowel Hunter," she whispered, her tone dripping with twisted pride. He blinked, confusion cutting through the haze of pain. "What does that even mean?" he managed to rasp. Her laughter popped up, light and airy, like if she had just heard the best joke ever. "Oh, sweetie, you'll find out soon enough," she murmured, her fingertips tracing the edge of her blade. "You see, everyone has something they cherish. Something they cannot live without. And me." She gently rubbed the flat of her blade against his naked stomach. "I prefer to cut it out. I adore seeing the many hues that emerge." His blood ran cold. Her words sank in like the sharpest of blades, and the weight of her nickname hit him like a punch to the gut. "You're sick," he hissed, his voice barely more than a whisper. She shrugged, rising to her feet with an air of nonchalance. "Sick, maybe, but I'm also very, very good at what I do." She pointed her blade at his chest, the glowing ring reflecting in her cruel eyes. "And you, my dear, are about to become my finest addition yet." The ring spins faster, and the clank grows louder, nearly drowning out her speech. His body tried to recover, and the wound in his stomach started to heal. But her blade fell again, slicing across his chest and halting the healing process. She laughed, her tone giddy with excitement. "Oh, this is going to take ages. You're a gift that just keeps on giving." He gritted his teeth, the pain nearly unbearable, but his resolve hardened. He couldn't let her win. Not here, not now. Through the haze of agony, his thoughts found their anchor once more, the girl. He didn't know where she was, but if this monster wasn't stopped, she would be next. The ring pulsed violently, the glow now almost blinding. He felt something shift within him, a surge of power that burned like fire in his veins. The Bowel Hunter noticed, her grin faltering for just a moment. "Oh, what's this?" she said, her tone curious, almost delighted. "Are you finally going to show me something new?" He met her gaze, his eyes blazing with determination. "You're not getting what you want," he growled, his voice low but steady. "Not today." Her lips formed an uncomfortable curl, indicating her delight. Her eyes glowed with anticipation as she watched him stand, the ring's subtle metallic clanking throwing spooky shadows on his broken frame. My, she cooed, twirling her blade in one hand like a predator toying with its prey. "You're still standing. How impressive. Fufu, I was worried you'd break too quickly." Subaru's breathing was ragged, his body screaming in protest, but his resolve burned bright. He raised his wooden shard, his grip tightening despite the blood on his hands. "You're going to have to try harder than that," he growled, his voice strained but steady. The Bowel Hunter tilted her head, her grin widening. "Oh, don't worry, I intend to." She lunged, her movements a blur of acrobatic precision. Her blade flashed like lightning as she twisted midair, striking at angles that seemed impossible. She came at him from above, below, and the sides, like a wild animal circling its prey, searching for the perfect moment to strike. Subaru's body reacted instinctively, the ring's influence sharpening his reflexes. He dodged a slash aimed at his throat, barely shifting in time to avoid a second strike aimed at his ribs. Her blade sang through the air, leaving shallow cuts on his arms and legs, but none landed deep enough to disable him. My, you're faster than I thought, she purred, landing gracefully a few feet away. She licked a streak of blood from her blade, her eyes gleaming with sadistic glee. Fufu, I wonder, how much longer can you keep this up? Or will you just fall apart like all the others? Subaru didn't answer. He adjusted his stance, his mind racing. Her movements were unpredictable, her attacks relentless. She wasn't just strong, she was skilled, her every motion designed to kill. She came at him again, flipping into a cartwheel midair and slashing downward. Subaru barely managed to block with his shard, the impact jarring his entire arm. She twisted her body, spinning into a low sweep that he jumped over, only to find her blade slicing toward his side. He pivoted, the edge grazing his skin but failing to draw blood. Fufu, look at you go. She sang, her voice mocking. You're learning. Maybe you're not as hopeless as I thought. Subaru gritted his teeth. Her taunts were like knives, cutting at his focus, but he refused to falter. The ring pulsed again, and he felt the shift within him, his body was hardening, his reflexes sharpening. Her blade wasn't cutting as deep anymore, his skin thickened just enough to turn fatal strikes into glancing blows. The bowel hunter noticed too. Her grin faltered for just a moment before it returned, sharper than before. Oh, you're adapting. How cute. She leaped into the air, somersaulting and coming down with a devastating overhead slash. Subaru sidestepped, his shard coming up to block. The force of her strike sent a shockwave through his arm, but he held firm. Her eyes widened slightly, the first hint of surprise breaking through her sadistic amusement. Fufu, not bad, she murmured, stepping back and circling him like a predator. But can you keep up with this? She launched into a flurry of movements, her attacks faster, more unpredictable. She vaulted off the walls, flipped over his head, and struck from angles he couldn't anticipate. But Subaru kept moving, his body adapting with every exchange. His breathing was labored, his muscles screaming, but he refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing him fall. Then, as she prepared for another strike, the air grew cold. Enough. A voice rang out, clear and commanding. The temperature in the room plummeted as Emilia, Scheller, burst onto the scene. Frost spread across the ground, and ice shards materialized in the air, their sharp edges glinting in the dim light. The bowel hunter turned, her grin faltering. Oh, my, she said, her tone mocking but tinged with wariness. Another one. Fufu, how exciting. Emilia didn't hesitate. She raised her hands, magic surging through her veins. You're finished. The ice shards shot forward in a deadly barrage. The bowel hunter dodged with acrobatic grace, flipping and twisting through the air. But Emilia wasn't aiming to hit her directly. The shards exploded on impact with the ground and walls, sending waves of frost that crept toward the bowel hunter with relentless speed. Subaru watched, his chest heaving, as the frost began to overtake her. The bowel hunter's movement slowed as the ice climbed up her legs, encasing her in crystalline chains. She thrashed, her grin turning into a snarl as the frost crept higher, freezing her arms, her torso, her neck. Finally, she was still, frozen from head to toe, her sadistic grin preserved in the frost like a grotesque statue. The room fell silent. Subaru staggered, his knees buckling as the adrenaline left his body. Emilia was there in an instant, catching him before he hit the ground. Subaru, she gasped, her hands trembling as she supported him. He managed a weak smile, his voice barely a whisper. I'm fine, thanks to you. Emilia's eyes softened, relief washing over her. You don't have to do this alone, she murmured, her grip tightening around him.